Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the speakers for our afternoon panel entitled View from the Top, the State of the Video, TV, Film Business. Please welcome Doug Scott, President of Ogilvy Entertainment, who will arrive momentarily. Thomas Gewecke, Chief Digital Officer, Warner Brothers Entertainment. Courtney Holt, COO of Maker Studios. Jennifer Prince, Head of Entertainment and Media at Twitter. And a warm welcome for our moderator, Andrew Wallenstein, Editor-in-Chief of Digital at Variety.
Well, thanks. This is going to be an interesting panel because we've not only got some great brands represented here, but by some great people who are kind of really at the forefront of what's going on at their great brands. And I thought it'd be best because there's, you know, very different kinds of businesses being represented here to sort of start in a very sort of broad, general way, and then we'll kind of dig in a little bit as we go. But I mean, if there's one commonality, I think, to these businesses, it's the audience they're trying first and foremost to reach, and of course the buzz term of choice being the millennials. And so I wanted to get sort of like a level check with each of you in terms of, you know, what are you doing within your respective companies to sort of focus on this, you know, so-called new breed of people? How are they different? How do you differentiate between sort of reaching that audience versus the general population? Doug, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I mean, the challenge that we're all facing, or you know, really drives our businesses every day, and the industry at large is that of, you know, to your point, millennials and how we reach them, and it's being driven by technology, and it's really understanding basic human behavior, right? We want information when, where, how we want it. We want it to provide us with greater value. Some of us want to go deeper. Some of us want to go wider in terms of the conversation or the information that we're getting. And, you know, it's very much about the now. You know, I like to sort of call it Generation Now, right? Because they want it now, and they want it for free, and they want even more value, and they want to, you know, as Spacey said in his speech, they want to tweet it and blog it and post it and mash it and do everything with it. And for us, with our clients, you know, it's very much about how we engage these individuals with an ongoing conversation. It's about a dialogue. For too many years, we've all heard the term one-to-one marketing. You know, Sergio Zyman really spoke about that for years, and it was undeliverable. Some of the infrastructure was there, some of the tools were there, but we weren't ready for it across the entire, you know, media ecosystem. And I think that what we've got now are the tools and the opportunity to come to bear with that. One of the things I find exciting about conferences out in Los Angeles is I don't necessarily know that the storytellers are doing enough in terms of engaging the audience with an ongoing dialogue, right? The advertisers are seeking it, they're willing to pay for it. There's a lot of different payment models being discussed. There's an enormous amount of data out there to track it all, to see what the value is, right? But the stories are just starting to evolve, you know, with companies like Maker, for instance, with two of their big recent announcements, you know, one of which was with Will.i.am, who is the ultimate in storytelling, and really excited to see how he embraces technology to do that. But, you know, for us, and really what's going on out there with this generation is it's understanding their habits, like, you know, Pavlov understood the dog, and conditioning them to get what they want, and really creating that trigger in terms of that exchange of information or time for value and product.
Okay, well, Courtney, you are a storyteller. I mean, are you guys innovating in a way that sort of meets the new demand?
I think that because we're working with creators all over the world, we're seeing it happening in real time. I mean, a large part of why a company like Maker can exist is because of what's happened with technology. This is not the first time online video has been attempted to scale it. I mean, I sort of had done a presentation, I put up this slide with all of these startups from the first wave of the internet, which were all focused on online video. What happened is we got to a place which when you're dealing with product development, we call it the happy place, where all these things line up. And it's the perfect scenario where a person is on this device with this bandwidth connection, and they're in this environment, and they're able to consume content. And that's when you looked at the first wave, that's what had to happen. Today, a product like YouTube is available on pretty much every connected device. And it works pretty well in almost any environment, especially on mobile. The evolution of the smartphone and tablet really started to put short-form online video in the hands of people on a remote basis, not just sitting in front of their computer where it's not basically the ideal place to watch video. And then when you see what's happened with Chromecast and Apple TV and Roku, you've got great third-party products that allow you to watch online video content, YouTube specifically, inside of a really good environment for traditionally consuming content. But I think what we're seeing is also what's happened with social media. Social media has allowed for the user experience to move. I mean, I will tell you, the discovery for young people of watching online video is certainly easier than navigating the electronic program guide on DirecTV or Time Warner Cable. To find something that's like, wow, that's really cool. I wonder if my friends are into that. Versus I can go on Twitter right now and I can consume a lot of really great video validated by friends. And so that's become the evolution of what we consider the electronic program guide. It's social, it's available, it's on demand. And so it's created this whole new ecosystem of consumption. And so I think for anything, we fulfill that demand. That's a large part of what we do.
Jen, let me skip you for a second because I want to go straight to Thomas, because you, as the so-called traditional studio, face this new ecosystem that Courtney describes. You know, that's got to be a pretty big reorientation for a Warner Brothers.
I think it's really exciting and it's a huge opportunity. I mean, we look at the marketplace broadly. We're an enormous producer of film and television and video game content. We look at this audience as one that's incredibly comfortable with technology, that's using a whole variety of new mechanisms to engage in discovery, as Courtney said, with social incredibly important. There's an audience that's often doing more than one thing at a time. You know, watching television, playing a game on a tablet or a phone, maybe having more than two screens. I look at my own kids who always have more than one device when they're engaging in video consumption, and who will do things like spend half the morning, on a weekend playing Minecraft, and the other half watching videos about Minecraft, on one of your channels, Courtney. And
Thank you.
And it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's a whole new way of consuming media. I think from our standpoint, it's a real opportunity to continue to create fantastic entertainment product. We distribute our content everywhere, across traditional and non-traditional channels, and I think as we see audience shifting from one channel to the other, we continuously are looking for ways to partner with new creators, create new kinds of content, experiment with new types of production and narrative structure. We've done lots of things, whether it's with digital originals or simply with releasing our existing content on Facebook or across digital channels or on YouTube or in places where it can be viewed in different ways. And it's a phenomenal opportunity to interact with the audience directly. Doug, you mentioned that there's a tremendous amount of data that you can look at, both what are people looking at, how long are they viewing things for, what are they doing at the same time, how can we begin to surface recommendations and otherwise use data in ways that are incredibly valuable both to us, but most importantly to our consumers. I think we look at it as a tremendous opportunity and in a lot of ways a real continued growth in consumption of the kind of entertainment that we produce.
And Jen, sitting at the Twitter seat, and when Thomas talks about data, you guys are sitting on top of a lot of that. So how are your relationships with the Warner Brothers or the makers of the world in terms of how data comes into whether it's sharing or selling, licensing? I mean, I would assume it's a kind of an important piece of what Twitter's all about. Yeah, it's definitely important. I would say when it comes to the data, the insights, what you can learn from just looking at a movie and the life cycle of a film and seeing early out, you drop one trailer or you drop an image of cast, whatever it might be, and just seeing what that reaction is and being able to use Twitter data and other insights and data to understand and manage the perceptions of your films. I think that's what I'm thinking about as working with the movie studios, the TV networks. It's how do we empower, especially the marketers who are working rigorously on these campaigns to put out these products, and what can we do to, once again, empower and get more of the data and insights that can help actually create change along the way, every dollar spent to be even more efficient. And I would say when it comes to millennials, it's not just about target audiences on Twitter, it's about target moments. So where the millennials come into play, they happen to be power users and they are craving the content that we're seeing from someone like Warner Brothers, Maker, and that's where they want to consume, and they're the ones who are determining, as we've talked about consumer behavior, when they want to see it, on what device,
at any moment, and just kind of real-time content discovery on Twitter. It's just about finding that piece of content, once again, at the right place and the right time.
Staying on the data point, though, obviously we're talking about a lot of different changes here, but to me, when I think about media companies in general, getting their hands around this, tonnage of data is probably the biggest challenge, the biggest change. Thomas, for you guys at the studio, I would imagine, when you're talking to people who are, they've been TV producers and movie producers 10, 20, 30 years, and you talk about this kind of stuff, do they get it? How do you make them get it?
Yeah, I think it's a really widely acknowledged and understood opportunity, and I think we all experience it in our daily life. We're all users of these platforms and technologies. We all see the data that's both being, implicitly and explicitly collected and is available. You can see what's out there. I think the really interesting opportunity is taking expressions of affinity, of which there are an enormous amount, and converting them into engagement and action. We look at Facebook as one example. I think Warner Brothers properties have something like 800 million Facebook fans across all of our different properties and brands. It's an extraordinary number of people who have taken a very affirmative action. They've said they like one of our movies or television shows or games, and we are spending a lot of time looking at ways in which we can reach out to those individuals and give them an opportunity to do more. To post something, to find out more about a product that we have, to kind of convert that affinity into action. We are now a publisher of a large number of apps, whether it's Flickster, which is a company really the leading mobile movie discovery service that we acquired a couple of years ago, or we have a number of free-to-play mobile gaming apps. We release a large number of promotional apps every year. They're downloaded by tens and tens of millions of consumers around the world. Every one of those instances is an opportunity to establish a one-to-one connection with someone around a brand or a franchise or a property that they have a strong affinity for. And I think that we're certainly at the early stages of understanding how do you get really, really good and really, really competent at servicing that consumer well. It's a whole new area of business, but I think that across the studio, certainly within our marketing team, certainly among the producers and directors and writers and talent that we work with, there's a tremendous amount of interest and I think an increasing amount of sophistication in reaching out through those platforms. And I think it's only going to become more and more effective.
And Courtney, for you, you talked about social as the discovery tool, but are you looking at, well, not necessarily just social, but just data in general? You guys can really, because you have that direct connection to the consumer, really kind of drill down on what works, what doesn't, how do we improve what we do? Are you?
Yeah, we do a lot of that. We're not necessarily known as a technology company, but technology underpins everything we do. We've got 65 engineers at Maker, and a large part of what they're doing is collecting and processing data. We're doing billions of lines of new data every day, and we're analyzing almost every instance of consumption that you possibly can across YouTube, our direct platforms, and through social media. And we use it in a lot of different ways, and we have a lot of business intelligence in how we can help our creator community. We have a relationship with over 55,000 creators globally, representing over 100 countries, and we have consumption in every country on the planet. But we want to be able to educate them as to how they can better publish. Now, I'll tell you that there's lots of things from a publishing standpoint that can impact the findability of your content. What time of day you publish, how long your videos are, and we can actually allow people to effectively change course in real time. Tagging, thumbnails, all of these things actually can have an impact on the audience finding your content. When to use social and how to use social? Do you upload and then publish to social immediately? Is there latency in your content getting into feeds on Facebook and Twitter? How to use Instagram and Vine, and I could go on, but I'm telling you we're tracking all of it because it's really important. We think about what information we can pass through to our creators, not to mention the fact that we're managing we have 23 vertical brands on our own, plus we have a ton of programming and development. So we look at everything, and sometimes the information that we're seeing is surprising. The one thing I think you can't take for granted is you got to also go with gut. A large part of what we do is combine art and science, because as much as we can say all of this data is great, this should inform how we're going to produce content. At the end of the day, and I spend a lot of time in the music business, as did Thomas, when you want to move culture, you don't look at what happened. You have to sort of make some bets on what's about to happen. Many of our partners and publishers that we work with are taking chances. And things are moving really, really fast. I mean, one of the biggest talent on YouTube, or the biggest talent, is a guy named PewDiePie, who's one of our talent. Many of you may not have heard of him. He's about to cross 25 million subscribers on YouTube, the first talent to ever do that. He published his first video 38 months ago. First, ever. And now he's huge, getting about 220 million views a month on his main channel. He's a media company on his own right. Incredible talent, does tons of stuff, but he thinks about his publishing not as, I'm going to make random videos. He thinks about it with the certain amount of discipline that most people take for granted works in online video. So we do look at all of this, and we work collaboratively to make sure that data is shared not just with our talent partners, but also with marketers. So when I work with Doug on projects, a lot of times I expose this data to him to help him understand how we can actually more efficiently target and reach audiences, not on a one-to-one basis specifically, because that's somewhat inefficient. But I will tell you, I could deliver a millennial-sized audience, a millennial Super Bowl-sized audience pretty much every day, which is maybe not what a marketer is looking for, but the fact that we can use the data to effectively try and reach people in a way that they have never been reached before with a certain amount of efficiency is new. And it's a brand new and evolving strategy that I think a lot of marketers are going to get excited about.
And good segue for you, Doug, because for you, I think there's an added pressure where it's like you are representing marketers who are going to be saying after you've done, branded entertainment project X, okay, how did I move the needle? I would assume data becomes a part of that conversation.
I mean, data does become part of the conversation. David Ogilvy said, "We sell or else," and really the only data point out there is sales. Right. There are very clear KPIs that a brand goes in to any initiative with, whether it's our client Hellman's, which is all about moving mayonnaise, and for them it's, how do I get one more usage out of the jar per week, which then increases frequency, which then drives one more jar, two more jars a year. For IBM, it's all about qualified leads to the C-suite. So, I think that we're, again, as an industry, we're a little bit behind the eight ball because we continue to look at, metrics such as Facebook likes, right? To me, a like it's slacktivism, right? I like it. Well, what does that mean, really? I took a moment out of my day to like a property, right? But really what we're looking for, just as politicians are, is voting with our dollar, right? We're looking, Lego Movie, perfect example. The thing is Blockbuster for Warner. And that was the ultimate branded entertainment property. That brief, right, from a content perspective could not have been more spot on. Let's take every single license that we've ever put out there from Batman on through, let's load it up into a film, right? Let's create a great storyline with great voices, and let's prove Hollywood still works relative to not dropping 40+% week over week, that we can open more theaters after opening week, and it's gonna drive through the roof toy sales on the flip side. Hasbro did it, one time. People questioned whether they could do it again. I think they had a couple fits and starts with some of their other properties that were in there. But it's about selling, and it's about moving that sales needle. I argue that we will create more content, but do we have supply of time? Do we have time in the day to consume all of that content that we continue to produce, or are we going to get to a point where there's an oversupply of content, right? And subsequently, we have to find the better content that is going to meet my demand of what it is that I'm looking for at that moment and fulfill that emotional experience. One of the things that we believe is it's not about big data, it's about smart data driving big emotion, right? And the smarter the data, the closer I can understand what it is that somebody wants at a certain moment in time relative to their appetite, the more I can deliver that to them through any of those devices that we're talking about, because they're, it's ubiquitous at this point, right? We all talk about a second screen. It's not second, it's first person. It's in my pocket, it's with me on a plane, it's next to my bed, it's in my bed at times. My kids are on it, 2 screening away. It's normal behavior for this generation, right? So let's throw the device away, because it's not a question of device. The bandwidth is ubiquitous. It's just going to get fatter and fatter. right? So now it's about understanding, moments. That's what was mentioned earlier relative to Twitter. It's in the moment. And if I can deliver that in the moment and carry that forward with great story, what's going to happen is you're going to get an engaged audience, whether it be a C-suite executive or a 5-year-old playing Minecraft, right? And the fulfillment of what they want more of, that habitual behavior that we're all trying to create as marketers, is what we're trying to drive. And that builds brand loyalty and advocacy and more sales, and then we all win. To me, cost per thousand, cost per click, cost per view, they're irrelevant. It's cost per lead and cost per acquisition. Show me somebody that is qualified to buy my car, drive them in for purpose, right? If they're in market, the lease is about to end, what all those qualification hurdles are, and help me sell. And that's really what it all comes down to. Whether we're selling a movie, whether we're selling a jar of mayonnaise, whether we're selling video, or selling the connection that Twitter is, because to me, Twitter is a dial tone at this point, right? I pick up my phone, I expect to be able to have a conversation, and I go on Twitter, I expect to be able to speak to a group of people that want to listen, right? And that's really what we're after in terms of understanding the use of data, in my view, to drive the ultimate metric, which is selling.
It's a lot to take in. But in terms, I want to start with where you began, though, with this notion of, faulty or inefficient engagement metrics. I mean, what do you envision would be a media world where you are able to, have just very good engagement metrics? What does that look like for you?
I think there's probably a world out there, because you're not going to go from tonnage, right, to delivery of sales, right? There's an area in between that has to be learned, right? I think there's a blended rate out there. So I'm going to buy audience at a cost per thousand, right? And then I'm going to engage that audience in a conversation through a tool that triggers off of the content I'm watching. And maybe it's Twitter as that tool, or maybe it's another social media, right? So that's a cost per engagement, or a cost per click, or a cost per view. Right? So I made them aware of something, they clicked on the video on Maker, now I'm viewing that video, and the brand is paying for that. But it's not a $35 cost per thousand, or it's not a 50-cent cost per view. It's a blended rate all the way down that's leading me deeper and deeper and deeper into the conversation. And I think a media company like Comcast, for instance, who goes from the home through the channel and the content and the broadband service and every other aspect in between, can go from awareness down to a lead in a local market to a car dealer, and in essence get paid for every single lead that they're delivering to BMW. And whether they're using BMW films or the latest James Bond film, they're using story to drive cultural context, right? Which is then driving commerce, and that's the formula that has basically goes all the way back to early radio with sponsored shows or to the soap opera. So I think it's a blended rate, and I think we have to, as an industry, get out of this, let's go to the upfronts and buy shows we know nothing about. And then I need you to make good on what you didn't deliver, but oh, by the way, you have a lot of other shows that aren't delivering that audience either. So how is it a $9 billion upfront? Well, the dirty little secret is that the supply of the large audience is less. Therefore, the demand to get that audience is greater, which means economic theory says the price of that audience has to go up, which is why it's $9 billion. It's a smaller audience. So therefore, the price is going up, right? We're going after smaller audiences, yet you have gigantic audiences through digital medium, through Twitter, right? Through a property like Lego. And I think it's about finding those great stories and looking at the better properties than worrying about the tonnage that's out there.
Okay, so Jen, for where Twitter sits in the ecosystem here is, I think, kind of a distinctive place. And so when you're out here in LA and you're selling to studios and TV networks and whatnot, what is the pitch? Because it was interesting hearing from Facebook earlier. It was an executive talking about the entertainment industry, and some get it and some don't. From a Twitter perspective, do they get what you're selling in terms of their ability to reach consumers?
Yeah, so I don't think this audience wants to hear my sales pitch, and I'm kidding. I would say that entertainment and content, TV, film, home entertainment as an example, It's been endemic to the Twitter platform for years. So when Twitter first started monetizing and they were able to capitalize on reach and audiences in this distribution platform, I think that they were the first to go there. I think that now everything has evolved in terms of our products and innovation and targeting capabilities. The creative canvas of Twitter itself, going from 140 characters to now being more visual with media forward, with Vine and pictures being pre-expanded, et cetera. So I think that because Twitter's moving so quickly and evolving, it's hard for anyone to completely keep up. But I think that brands such as movies and home entertainment titles and television programming has been at the forefront of taking advantage of the platform. So I think that with creative content that comes from the entertainment studios across the board, I think that Twitter is a great canvas and landscape for images and photos and pages of scripts and integration of hashtags into off-air, pushing to on-air to off-air, like everything involved from being on the set, being within writers' rooms, to then actually the few weeks before a release of a movie, for example, getting out there with some creative, innovative digital billboards that are talking to one another with Twitter integrated into them, and or just using video assets or providing access to Twitter consumers of something that they want that they can't get elsewhere. And they really can't find it on any other social platform as well. It's, whether it's connecting with talent or the brands of, let's say, a Lego movie, and being able to connect emotionally, like Doug's mentioning, and getting access to things that you wouldn't find on any other platform. And then, with these affinities and interests, being able to connect with other people with these aggregated conversations through hashtags. It's just a great place to connect on something that you care about, that you're passionate about, whether they're your friends or they're celebrities or it's President Obama, you can connect there. So I think that, to go back to your initial question, the studios and the entertainment brands have been the first to embrace the platform. I just think that there's so much more, and that there needs to be this continuous line of communication and conversation about what's next, what we recommend, strategies and tactics. For example, the TV ad targeting as one example. It's just now that you can actually take what you do on television and then finish it on Twitter and have both be this push-pull and this 1-2 punch of hitting a consumer with a message. It's really powerful. So because that's newer to market, it's a matter of getting in front of our customers and making sure that they're privy to everything that they can explore on Twitter.
So let's look at it from the other side for you, Courtney and Thomas. As you look to Twitter, is there something, because obviously you've got a whole range of platforms and whatnot where you could do your marketing messages internally. Do you say, well, here's what we got to use Twitter for?
I think, first of all, it's conversation as discovery. I think it's a whole new way of reaching people. It's there are so few opportunities to leverage serendipity today, and a lot of the ways in which consumers used to discover new media, new entertainment are less accessible now. And you look at platforms like Twitter, and it's a tremendously new way to find things. And then I think you look at the power of community. And if you take one example, in our case, if you look at the Veronica Mars movie Kickstarter project, which is a very special, very unique project, really conceived by Rob Thomas, the creator of the Veronica Mars TV show, and Kristen Bell, the star. Really a tremendously successful Kickstarter campaign a year ago that broke all the records and raised nearly $6 million for the movie. 91,500 people pre-ordered the DVD or the digital download or the t-shirt or a poster to express their support as a focused community for that project. It's a movie that's been produced. We're releasing it on March 14th. So we're kind of coming up on the 1-year anniversary of that project. And it's totally unique. We've never done anything like that before, and we were able to support a concept that the creator of the show and its lead actress came up with. They reached out to their community through a platform that didn't exist, and Twitter was probably the single most important marketing component because everyone involved with the project leveraged Twitter continuously to try to communicate what was happening and to ask for specific actions from the fans who were able to vote with their dollars, with their votes, with postings, with with all sorts of communal activity to drive awareness, publicity, and marketing exposure for the project. And really, we've sort of conducted the entire rollout of this property in a way that's very, very different than what we would normally do, but it's a great example of what we could do for many larger properties as well.
And Courtney, for you, like you were saying earlier, I would imagine some of the content brands that sit under the Maker umbrella, Twitter's kind of a key fire hose in terms of just letting people know.
Yeah, Twitter, I mean, it's a key part of our marketing strategy. We don't buy media, right? So the way we get the word out is through entirely earned media opportunities. And so leveraging our individual talent brands, also our Maker-owned and operated brands, through Twitter is a big part of how we market content. And we're tracking the efficacy of marketing through social media because we're watching where the end user goes and how frequently they can come back. So it has been a really key part of our overarching strategy. And I think a different approach is we also work collaboratively with them. We can talk about that. I think we were one of the first companies that were not a traditional media company to be invited to participate in Amplify. And that was cool, that we were not just encouraged to be good and smart about using Twitter to promote, but we can actually use Twitter to package, which I think is really important because I think everybody who's involved in media will say Twitter is now a key part of your overall marketing strategy, whether paid or earned. For us, I think as we can think about it as a component of content, it's pretty interesting, and we're actually thinking about developing ideas that leverage the Twitter ecosystem in a really interesting way because it is a pretty cool storytelling medium, and with the evolution of media in the Twitter stream, it's only getting more effective at being a storytelling mechanism. I like what you said about the extension of a TV marketing message. We think about it as an extension of our storytelling device. Video and YouTube are very key to that, but what we can do with Twitter around the fringes, both to drive awareness and to be part of the conversation, we're finding to actually be really kind of cool.
Yeah. It was interesting seeing earlier this year on Twitter a few different content creators take to it and use it as a storytelling platform as opposed to just marketing the content. And some brands were along for the ride for some of that too. I mean, Jen, do you see more of that coming down the pike? Because it was pretty innovative stuff, but I don't know if it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at traditional windowing or release schedules, there are ways to play around with strategies, whether it's releasing early on Twitter before you're in theaters, going wide, and having the consumers on Twitter need to do something and participate and engage and take action to possibly get into select theaters around the country, which people flock to those things, no pun intended. So I think it's just playing around with windowing and ideas and creativity of distribution. And I think Twitter amplifies the perfect example of truly a win-win-win between content creators, Twitter is that platform, getting to consumers, having brands be a part of that content, which they're craving and they're doing on air, for example, or on Maker, on YouTube, where they want that custom branded entertainment and engagement. So Amplify as a program is the first time we're able to scale and work with content creators and share in the revenue.
While we're talking about marketing on each other's platforms, I mean, Maker in and of itself becomes a platform for a studio like a Warner Brothers. I mean, should be disclosed, Time Warner has a stake in Maker, but Thomas, as you look to these, MCNs, these massive content machines, you, in effect, can, just like you were talking about using Twitter in a certain way, an MCN becomes a whole other place to play.
Sure, in multiple levels. I mean, we're working together with Maker on shows today. We've also released shows on other MCNs. We work with Zephyr, another partner of ours, looking at all the content the clips of our content that users upload onto YouTube and looking at ways to manage and make that available and inventory all of that. And I think you both have a very, very large set of very interesting audiences that we want to create new content for, but also very clearly a strong marketing platform for all of our traditional content as well. And so it's a very healthy ecosystem. We have great relations with Maker and across the whole sort of network. I think that we look at it as a huge opportunity. And we're always looking at not just how can we take our existing product and amplify the effect of our brands and franchises. And we see so much activity from our communities of existing consumers who are already using these platforms to do things, but we also look at ways to experiment with the narrative form. I mean, it's very different to produce 3 to 6 minute shorts than it is to produce a full-length theatrical movie. We've been able to create content that plays in multiple durations and multiple lengths. We've been able to create content that is designed to be viewed in different orders to kind of give writers and actors and directors an opportunity to experiment. And the nature of the new platforms that companies like Courtney's are creating really impose no boundaries. I mean, we can really look at how do you create fantastic entertainment to reach many different audiences in different ways in a very targeted, very efficient way, as well as just whole new approaches to marketing. So from our standpoint, it's a tremendous opportunity.
And Doug, from your perspective, I mean, right or wrong, tell me, when I look at the MCNs and what they're doing on YouTube or elsewhere, the amount of, for lack of a better term, product or brand integration that goes on there in terms of, the talent kind of embracing products and literally not just working a product in a mention or something like that. The whole damn show is sometimes about a product. Do you look at these kind of programs and say, all right, this is something that's uniquely powerful?
Well, look, there's a tasteful way to do it, and then there's the shill, right? And there's ham-fisting a product into something, kowtowing to whoever is paying you. I don't, we don't do a lot of, I would say, product placement. It's more about working closely with, the channel and the talent, and really helping them understand, again, what it is that we're trying to achieve, what it is that the product represents in terms of the brand, because you're talking about, companies that have spent billions of dollars and that are, 50, 100 years old relative to being in the home or part of our cultural, sort of context out there. So there's a fine art to it. I don't think what you saw in the past feature-wise or what, Fallon is now doing with GE, with the young inventors, is any different than what you're going to see happen on Maker or in YouTube or any other shows. I think the challenge, obviously, is not turning off the audience in a shorter video where they're not feeling like they're just being sold and it's an infomercial. So.
I guess I would argue it is different than what Fallon is doing, where you watch an episode in late night and there may be a segment that is a straight shill.
Well, that's the challenge.
But
right?
I think
it's still a segment. You can, and GE will do this. GE will extract that entire vignette from that show, post it up on YouTube minutes after it airs, right? Depending upon what that deal is with NBC and how quickly they can get it up. And then that thing, they'll look to drive millions of hits to that, to then deliver on, to your point earlier, the ROI that the media agency sold GE relative to the NBC bundled up front that basically put GE in. And there is value there because it's going to shift the GE brand from moving it from the meatball we all know and love that makes jet engines and trains to an innovator looking at how to drive STEM amongst young people. And that's what that message is that Beth Comstock is after. So as long as there's purpose behind it, right? There's a brief behind something, and it's not just gratuitous for gratuitous sakes. Whether you do it in 3 minutes on broadcast or you do it 3 minutes online, the same care has to go into it to ensure that you're crafting the message in a way that it's going to resonate with the audience.
So what's an example of a finely honed message that you guys have done, whether on Maker or otherwise?
A finely honed message that we've done? I wouldn't, I think Dove sketches, right? Some will argue Dove sketches was an ad, right? And to some degree, it carries the real beauty positioning. But I think Dove sketches was a really good piece of content. Was it honed with an MCN or anyone else in terms of developed with any talent? No. We have not done a lot of that. It's something that we're exploring more of. We're in discussions with several of the bigger, online stars out there right now to figure out what is the right opportunity. But it's less about the quantity of those deals for us and more about the quality and making sure that they're right for our clients.
Okay. Switching gears for a bit, we should be talking a bit about mobile. It's bad that that very word is not brought up in this part of this conversation. It's been kind of a recurring theme today, how important and critical it is. And so for your own respective businesses, is there a truly sort of mobile-first mantra going strategically? For you, Jen, at Twitter, I would imagine it's got to be all about that because social and mobile are like this nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're beyond mobile first. We're just Twitter as a platform, and mobile's 75% of it. So as we're once again building on products and targeting and capabilities and thinking about just users and their experience, we're thinking mobile all the way.
Mm-hmm. And Courtney, what is the percentage now of maker content consumed on mobile?
Globally, over 40% of our consumption's in a mobile device and growing. Some channels we're seeing 60-70% mobile consumption. We do think less about the screen than we think about the product. And at the end of the day, we know that that's the direction it's moving. Everything we developed on YouTube, and YouTube is a great product on mobile, and our own video platforms all scale. We built everything around a responsive consumption design, so it scales for whatever the screen is. But I believe in I think I forgot when you referenced it, whether it was primary screen experiences. Mm-hmm. We talk about personal screen experiences, and I talk about we don't talk about the second screen because we don't believe that there really is one. If you're playing Angry Birds, that's what you're doing. The TV might be on in the background, but we do collect a lot of data, because I will say that so much of what we're doing in our world is educating. It's still the early days, and we don't have a lot of proxy in how this has worked before. Because of the rise of mobile, and because I think online video is almost its own form. It's not just shorter videos, it's a whole new mechanism in how, I think all the things I talked about earlier about how social plays such a key role in it. It's its own format, and it really is optimized for mobile consumption. I think I was talking about this earlier with you about I don't, as much as I watch a ton of YouTube content, I never sit down and say I'm going to watch a 2-hour block in front of my TV. It's not how I'm consuming it yet, but my kids will sit there and hours will go by and they've watched a ton of video, and they will shift from a music video to a scene from their favorite show to a movie trailer, and they do it with such dexterity and ease. And that becomes their primary focus. That's the only experience they've got. If the radio or TV's on in the background, they almost tune it out. And there's a lot of data to support that we're going to train this generation to not look at the screen on the wall as the primary screen. It's going to be the one in their pocket. So we think about that all the time, and we look at fall off on length of content viewership. And even when I say short form content, we might have a 70-minute gaming video. It's still short form in the way it is created. Maybe not in the fact that it is 4 minutes long, but there's a certain DNA to both the creation and the consumption with mobile in mind, in every step of the way.
Before I turn to you, Thomas, I just want to tell the audience we'll go out to you for questions in just a bit. But
I was going to say, I think you look at the broader business. Of course, the vast majority of video consumption is still in movie theaters and on DVD and on television. I think American consumers spent something like $11 billion going to the movies last year. And it's still a very, very big, robust business. When you look at digital video consumption, mobile is incredibly important, and the statistics are incredible. In the last few years, these double-digit increases every year in shift from online to mobile viewing, and really a lot of incremental viewing as consumers use tablets and smartphones as increasingly significant video devices, and as they begin to use them to watch multiple things at the same time, or to engage in all sorts of interactive activity while they're watching video. So it's incredibly important. I think that not only is the consumption really, really interesting, I think going back to this idea of discovery, it's hard to overstate how important mobile has become because of things like Twitter to discovery, and how fundamentally it has the opportunity to change consumers' behavior, particularly in terms of how they find new things. And I think that we're seeing that that's shifting audiences, not just between platforms, but it affects viewing behavior across all of the traditional media as well.
Okay. If you have any questions, we've got people with mics. Just raise your hand and.
Hi, I'm just trying to get a sense, in the MCN world, the growth of that, it's moved quite a bit from where it was in the beginning in terms of a business model, but where do you see it going in the future in terms of how soon, or where do you see it scaling? What's the next step? What's the next half for that?
Well, I don't know what's really changed from our perspective. I mean, we've grown exponentially. I think a lot of the players in the space have, and we're doing about 6 billion video views a month now, and we're working with 55,000 creators. So we found a way to scale with technology, but our business model remains the same, and I always joke that we're not that different from a traditional media company because we make things and distribute things. And a large part of what we're developing is a relationship with the consumer, and then we're looking at advertisers that are wanting to be part of that ride with us. Marketers and advertisers that want to reach a hard-to-reach audience. The target demo that we work with, I mean, there's data that came out from Nielsen a number of weeks ago that 34% of that audience will not watch television, any broadcast television. They are now consuming primarily online. You're starting to see a big shift from where you have to go to reach them to where we are. So we're building that direct relationship. We maintain that. That was always the DNA. And we look towards ancillary ways that we can deliver value. We're creating new formats and shows. We have a lot of structure and discipline in how we produce. And I believe some of the next great global content formats and franchises will be incubated inside of studios like ours. Because we're talking to such a passionate creator community. And by the way, the tools for our creators to make things are evolutionary compared to where they may have been 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, I was joking when I first built a digital studio in 1992, we spent $250,000 on a computer. Today I can walk into the Apple store, I can buy a iPad for $500 with more processing power and create a movie on that device. It's got a camera, it's got editing software, it's got special effects, you can literally make a movie. So I think the opportunity for us to be able to get that out there as quickly and efficiently as possible on a reoccurring basis and then be in the conversation with marketers, I think is always been the business strategy. Where does it go from here? It's hard to say that we have the entire future laid out because we are living in a world where there's no roadmap. We're making a lot of this up as we go along. We've got a great senior management team that are thinking about how we're going to continue to grow and evolve the business. You know, we have a pretty strong international footprint. We're focusing on emerging markets. We're focusing on all the right things to continue to grow down the path, but nothing's really changed from our perspective. We remain pretty true to the mission that we started 4.5 years ago when the company was founded.
Over there, on that side.
Thank you. Excellent panel, you guys. Thank you very much. I'm president of a strategic advisory that focuses at the intersection of Hispanic and digital. And I'm interested, you guys talked a lot about millennial. And what a lot of folks may or may not know is that about half of the millennial audience, especially in this country, is made up of multiculturals. I'm interested in what each one of you guys is doing to address that business opportunity.
Well, I mean, look, we've set up a separate division internally at Ogilvy, really looking at the multicultural community. And I would say that, you know, although their consumption of content may be a little different based on devices that are out there in certain markets, their desire for, as you've heard up here, discovery, their desire for local content and fare, and for that matter, to really be part of a social conversation is the same as any other millennial. So I don't necessarily know that our focus from an advertiser's perspective is much different in terms of understanding the audience, when, where, and what they want. We're working very closely with one of our clients right now, specifically on developing original entertainment properties that address multicultural communities in multiple markets, whether it be Los Angeles, Texas, in Miami, right? Because each of those markets, although multicultural and part of the same Latina or what we found from our research is actually with millennials is not African American but Black. A lot of young, you know, black youth basically said, "Look, I'm Black, I'm American, and I'm Black. I'm not African, right? I may come from African descent, as many of us do, right? If we track ourselves back, but they want to be considered Black, and they were being spoken to by the media as well as by brands." In terms of a different subset. So it's understanding the culture and what their desires are, which is what we've really started to do, and then developing content specific to the device and the penetration of that device in those communities, and giving it to them at a very local level to where there's that pride in localization within their own, if you will, multicultural community. And then obviously borrowing from certain trends, whether it be the telenovela on the one side or some of the more, urban, now suburban entertainment properties that are out there. But what we're trying to do is sort of break, with this one specific client, break the stereotypes of multicultural, because really multicultural is mainstream to some degree and is becoming more mainstream based on the numbers that are out there.
Yeah, I think we take a similar approach. We have a creator community that represents the audience and the demographic. For us, creators and consumers become the same thing. I think maybe it's similar in sort of Twitter's case, that our creators are consumers and vice versa. We do have some interesting partnerships. Snoop Dogg is one of our partners and Ted Chung is manager. We work closely with Cashmere, an agency that focuses on multicultural. We have a great partnership with SA Studios, Mr. Cartoon and Esteban Oriol. These are partners to us because we're talking not just about content creation, but about marketing opportunities. And in both of those cases, they work collaboratively with brands and agencies to create marketing campaigns. We tie them back to content and creators. And there's a long list. In the interest of time, I won't go through them, but it's something we think about. We don't think explicitly about it because it's just core and nature to what we do, that we're going to be talking to the audiences that are consuming our content.
Yeah, in the last 6 months especially, we've put hyper focus on doing research to get to multicultural audiences and understand more of their behaviors. So we are ready to go to market and talk about that. Almost 30% of our audience is Hispanic and another 30% is Black or African American. And it's such a huge power user group. And so we're working with content creators when it comes to amplify to make sure that we're delivering the content that they want at the right time. Working with the movie studios on any of their releases that have more of that skew towards a certain segment or audience. So it's really top of mind for us, and we're paying close attention and putting a lot behind product development and research right now.
I think for our part, every title has its own marketing plans. Every movie, every television show, every game, and so it varies by title. But we are really, really focused on this idea of being able to look at marketing strategies across all the platforms and having the ability, building the ability to look at individual audiences in a very finely targeted way. We think it's really important. It's much more possible with the technologies in place than it was a few years ago. And it's one of the things that we're really investing heavily in. We think it really may change over time how we do marketing.
Thank you. Well, that's about all the time we have. About a hand for our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you to the State of the Film, Television, Video Business panelists.